Well, part one this morning of a KATC special report, I look at the fallout from the Vietnam War and the moment that would spark a mass evacuation and migration that would ultimately end up right here in Louisiana.
The briefing was delayed until the evacuation was completed, and the last helicopters are now in the air. During the day on Monday, Washington time, the airport in Saigon came under persistent rocket as well as artillery fire. The military situation in the area deteriorated rapidly. The president therefore ordered the evacuation of all American personnel remaining in South Vietnam.
In 1975, the city of Saigon fell, and those that had helped the U.S. or fought against the communists fled, leaving the country any way they could.
Dad said they evacuated with like a Honda bike. Okay, so you had 7 people. So you're ferrying one person at a time back and forth from Saigon to the boats.
Refugees hoping to escape the horrors of the Vietnam War and a chance at a new life.
And my dad was helping the refugees, and his boat sank. Only him and another person survived.
I was on my father's back coming over to America. I was so excited thinking that I am on a vacation.
Many of them not realizing that they were leaving their home for good.
My father said when he stepped on the boat, he thought that we were going to go for maybe a week or two, or maybe leave and go to another part of Vietnam. When they got to Singapore, he had a huge awakening. He's like, man, we just left our country.
Wow. So that migration eventually kind of trickles from Saigon and Vietnam, and what we're going to talk about later on this week is how the similarities between Louisiana and Vietnam made for a home away from home almost for all those people who had to leave during the Vietnam War.
It's amazing, you know, to drop everything, leave everything that you know,
Yeah.
you know, and especially for, you know, Peter's father, who I'm sure was probably a little younger than me.
Right, and we talked with his brother as well, and his brother was actually on the ship, and if you go to the web article, we've included some extra interviews and stuff in there where he just talks, it's raw interviews, but it's him talking about remembering coming over. And basically you just drop what you're doing and you got onto a ship. And he said a lot of them said that they didn't even realize they were leaving. It wasn't until they got to Singapore before they realized that they had even left Vietnam. They originally thought, well, maybe they're just going to pick us up at Saigon and move us to another part of Vietnam, and then all of a sudden, you know, no home, and everything, you know, from what they knew had all collapsed. So there's some really good stuff online. You can catch that at KATC.com.
And part 2 is going to run tonight on the KDN station?
No, part 2 it will air tomorrow. So we'll re-show part 1 again tonight at 5, and then we talk about, you know, how they ended up here, their journey from Vietnam to Louisiana, and then through the week we kind of talk about how by transplanting a lot of the Vietnamese in Louisiana, it has become a pretty big little culture, subculture of South Louisiana.
And this is something that you've been working on for years now.
Yeah, I sat down with field producer, photojournalist Justin Tarot, and I think we were on a Watch Your Story shoot. We were just chatting about Vietnamese style crawfish, and they cook it a different way, and we thought, oh, that would be a pretty fun story. So it started with this idea of doing a story on crawfish, and then the more we started looking into it and researching it, it turned into a much bigger story, and we sat down for our first round of interviews January of 2019.
Looking forward to part 2.